Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Journey Journals by Life of Gaia. My name is Gaia, and I am very excited about today's topic, which is going to be a deep dive into Native American culture. Now, how today's interview came about is that recently a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Samora, who happens to also be an adopted member of the Lakota tribe, participated into one of the very sacred rites of the Lakota tradition, and that is the naming ceremony, which is also known as the Hunka ceremony, or it basically means the making of relatives. So I would love to take a moment to welcome Dr. Samora and have her introduce herself. Welcome, Samora.
Thank you, Gaia. It's so great to be here. As she said, I am Dr. Samora. I am currently the active associate director for the new seminary for interfaith studies, which was also the same seminary that ordained me back in 2008. And in 2020, I also became a doctor of ministry, where part of my dissertation was learning about different cultures, as well as working with couples and working on who we are and how we identify in society and what gifts we can bring forward to our lives. I'm also a sound healer, and I work with a system called cymatics, which is the science of studying how sound and vibration can affect the basically the overall systems, like as far as your energy system and as far as the plants and the world around us. So this is something that I've been studying recently and have been working towards becoming more attuned to how this will also be a huge movement in medicine and in just overall health for everyone.
So I'd love you to start off by sharing with us what is the actual significance of the Lakota naming ceremony and what does it mean to you personally?
Well, the first thing I wanted to mention too is one of the first assignments that I had as associate director for the interfaith community and for the new seminary was to find who was going to be teaching our class on Native American spirituality. And so part of that process was I came about meeting a gentleman who is of the Lakota tribe. So I spent the past 2 years working alongside him. His name is Delwyn Fiddler, and his Lakota name is Hiakapamato, which means elk bear. And so I became part of the board of his nonprofit, which is called Paza Tree of Life. And when I started working with the organization, I realized how connected I felt to the teachings and the cause of just bringing healing to the people. I never realized how much struggle was happening in real time. A lot of times we're taught through history how much, these things are sort of framed in the past. But then when you're in the reality of what's really happening, the life on the reservations, that these are people that are living here in our, area, but at the same time are being treated like third world citizens. And so that really spoke to me, and it became very clear right away that I had to be part of this movement. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't understand what my call was, but I showed up and I said, I'm going to stand with you. And one thing that is very sacred to the Lakota is how people show up. And the circle that is created around them is not always the family of blood. Sometimes it's the chosen, and how you're defined in Native tradition by your role, by how you show up in the circle. So one thing I had learned from Hiakapamato was that when you're chosen as part of what they call the Tioshpae literally means the adopted family, that is a very sacred appointment. And that means that person that's adopting you is saying that they are going to protect you for life, and that you will also protect them for life. So it's a sacred contract, not literally where you sign anything, but it's of the spirit of the Wakan. So I as I spent more time with the organization and spent more time with Yakumo, it was very clear that this was a deeper connection and a deeper relationship. And he started to teach me about the traditions and take me on as almost like a partner.
Samora, could you describe the process of the Lakota naming ceremony and the role that it plays in the community?
Yes, so like mentioned before, that it's a very sacred honoring. If someone says to you, you've shown up for me, so I protect you for life, that is they have a term that's kichita. The kichita is the warrior, and many of us believe in our Western teachings, Western thought, that a warrior is someone that fights. But in essence, when you call someone your kichita, they're someone that's there as your support. That it's a sacred warrior. It's there is that they're bringing the medicine of the Wakan, which Wakan Tanka is the, the great spirit, into the circle. And so everyone that comes into the circle is then considered the family for life.
Samora, I'm going to add a little personal part to this question, and that is how this whole discussion between you and I came to be. Is that I remember at the time I had a very, very vivid dream about you the night before, and we, just so that the audience knows, Samora and I have known each other for years, but we live in different states. We don't always we're not in regular communication, and sometimes a couple of years go by and we don't speak to each other, but we've sort of connected via social media and all of that. But this dream was so vivid, and I dreamt of Samora dressed in full Lakota gear with a holding a drum to the side of her head and beating this drum to the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. And she just looked so powerful, and so there was just something so perfect and powerful about the dream. And I was told in the dream to communicate this to her. So I called her the next day, and I thought she's going to think I'm completely crazy, but we had an incredible conversation around it. And I happened to catch her, I think, the day before this ceremony was happening. I had no idea that this was about to take place. I had no idea that she was an adopted member. I had no idea that she had been chosen. And, I remember you saying something to me, and it was so important and so moving. And it really made me present to the importance of what was about to take place the next day. And you said to me, Gaia, I marry people for a living. All right. And so I'm around people making commitments all day, every day. And she said, this is one of the biggest commitments of my life. And I totally understand the apprehension that people feel. And, it was almost as if me calling and us having this conversation was confirmation of the choice that she was about to make and the importance of the choice that she was about to make. And so it's a bit long-winded, Samora, but I want to speak into the fact that you were recently chosen to participate in this naming ceremony. And I wanted to know what it was like for you when you were given your Lakota name during the ceremony, and what emotions and thoughts came through your mind at that moment.
Yes, well, I will say, when you called me that day, I was buzzing. I felt all the chills, and I know when I feel chills or when I cry, that is spirit. And that was such a resounding message and affirmation that I was on the right path, to be honest. So as you said, because I've been in the circle of relationships and commitments, I've married over 2,800 couples in my career, which is astonishing to me. Yet the strange part is I've never myself married. And part of my path, I believe, part of what I call they call the red road in the Native tradition, is to heal that part of myself. And when I was working with PAZA, we traveled to Colorado. And this was a few months before the naming ceremony was to take place for myself. We were in Colorado for an actual naming ceremony for two young men. Their mother had presented them together. They were two boys in their 20s, young, very young. And it was such a beautiful ceremony to watch the community come together, sing the sacred songs, and bring these boys into their manhood with the name that suited their role in the world. And the mother was the one who named them at birth, but now is also giving them their name for this ceremony. And I remember that evening, I was sitting around with the PAZA team and also the people we were visiting, talking about the upcoming naming ceremony. And one of the team members said, "Oh, it's almost time for Samora, to receive her name." And what's interesting is what I didn't understand is that you don't just create a name. A name comes through spirit. It comes in the way that it comes. So you can't, it's not something you force. It's even the relationship of adoption is not something that you can force. It comes through spirit. So I, we were all talking about the naming and what was my name going to be, and nothing, was really like, there were ideas, but nothing was really coming clear. So strangely enough, I had such an amazing like experience in Colorado. Something shifted in me that when I was driving home the following day in my car by myself, I hear this voice, and it was clearly an elder that said my name, and my name is Harmony Woman, the woman who brings union. And in Lakota, it's pronounced Owan Silawin, which means harmony woman. And so I'm sitting in the car going, "Oh my gosh, my name." And I knew. And little did I know that on the side, there were other things happening. So Paza, also, we were creating an art piece. She's a sculpture of a Native American woman, an elder woman, which we call Unchi, the grandmother. And she has spirals of DNA around a red heart. She's made of metal, and her hair are all braids of rainbow, and they swirl around her. And we were commissioning this piece of art. I did not know that her name was Unchi Owansila. Okay, so at the naming ceremony, which happened in November, they present Unchi Owansila, the piece, to the group at the Friendsgiving. We have a circle of a meal with all the people that support the organization. And at that gathering was also the naming. So they stand up and they're talking about this wonderful curated piece that was also curated and built by this iron Choctaw Lakota artist named Gene Ironman Smith. Oh my gosh. So we're learning about this sculpture, and they say her name, and I just had complete chills and realized that she was bringing us together, she and I, the spirit of Unchi. Unchi is very sacred in the Lakota tradition, because what's different about the Western family system is that we have ageism, where in the traditional, most indigenous cultures, the elders are revered and very much kept sacred. And so the fact that Unchi also carried harmony and unity, she is now also the other affirmation that I'm exactly where I need to be, because I was named by an elder in my car of that name, and then she was at the same time being created for Paza. And so that was very profound, and has also become part of what's kept me with Paza, is I'm now bringing Unchi Owansila as a piece to different educational settings to teach about unity. And so that I know that that's what my path is.
How does your chosen Lakota name influence and shape your identity now, and sort of how you perceive yourself in the world?
Well, what's really beautiful is that it's already who I am. It's so much of who I am. And I remember I went to a ceremony with a woman who I call my unchi. She's not my grandmother literally, but she has been that grandmother spirit, mother spirit to my family. And I went to a ceremony. She's Taino of the Taino tradition, which is very much like similar to the Lakota tradition in the sense that everything is earth-based. Everything is, grounded in connecting to the source, connecting to the great spirit as well as to the earth. And so I went to a ceremony. This was also a week before my naming ceremony. And the gentleman who was guiding and leading the ceremony, as soon as I walked in, they saw four Native American spirit dancers behind me. And I had also gone to a baby blessing about 4 months prior to that. And I walk in to do the blessing for this baby, and the grandmother in this family, she says to me, what's your background? What's your culture? And I said, oh gosh, I'm mixed. I have so many different like cultural origins. She said, well, before you walked in here, there were four Native spirit dancers that came in before you arrived to make sure that this was safe space for you. So, and this is before I met Jacopo Mato. So all of these things were definitely with me and have been with me for maybe lifetimes, possibly. And so when I went to this ceremony with who I call my unchi, they had said that not only were these four Native dancers with me at all times, they said they basically circle around me to make sure I am safe, that they also saw the vision of me by the water with the teepee and that in the regalia, and asked me, are you participating in the sacred tradition of the sweat lodge? The sweat lodge, I will tell you, is a cleansing ceremony. And that is where you go, literally, you build a womb. And it is the earth's womb, but it's also the mother of yourself, your mother, the mother earth, as well as, the divine mother. You build this womb and you have a sacred fire in the center and you sit. And, tradition was that it was always the men that would counsel around the fire inside of this sweat lodge. But now women do this as well. And what they saw in the vision was me doing the sweat lodge. And they asked me, are you doing this? And Tainos do not do anything like a sweat lodge. So I knew that it was not related to what they do. And I said, yes. And they said, well, continue to do what you are doing. You are supposed to be doing this. And then they showed me a vision of having to create a sacred rope or a sacred braid that represented all the different sort of medicines for myself. And we call, in the Native tradition, we call healing or gifts medicine. So I know that medicine is related to something else in Western thinking, but in the indigenous world, medicine is like your gift. It's what creator gave you for healing. And so they said to gather all the different things, the strands that represented my medicines, and to weave them together and to wear them whenever I do sacred ceremony. So I'm going to show it to you. Because I had no idea what this meant or what this would look like, but they said that this was going to be my protection at all times. And so this is my sacred belt, I guess you would call it. So in the Native tradition, the Cheyenne created something called the medicine wheel. I won't go too deeply into it, but essentially it represents the wheel of life. And so there's four colors representing the four directions. It also represents the four elements, the four different animal, all sorts of things. Four is a very sacred number. And so those four colors in Lakota are the red, black, yellow, and white are in the medicine wheel. And so I carry this around because it's really the wheel of life. So when you are in those different areas, if you go to a literal medicine wheel, when you're in those different areas, they are addressing the different parts of ourselves. So when we need healing, we might be drawn to one certain area or one certain type of plant or one animal. They might show up in our like reality, but we don't realize that it's telling us that that's where we need our healing. um that will be a whole other, talk that we can have. There's many beautiful things that we can all learn together. Another thing that I did right before my naming was I made my own drum. And I have her here. In the Lakota tradition, the drum, I don't know how well you can see it, but the drum is you. It's your heartbeat. And in some native tradition, they believe that the great spirit loved the heart and the drums so much that gave us each a heartbeat, which is our rhythm, right? Our rhythm. And so when I made this drum, this is elk skin, and they always used animal skin. In the Lakota tradition, the buffalo, the tatanka is sacred because it fed them, it built their homes, it built the tools that they lived, that they survived with, everything that they ate, everything that they were able to thrive was all came from the buffalo. And so this also the elk as well. So this is an elk skin that was blessed before it arrived. And basically, I have the 4 directions at the back. These are the 4 directions. And so as you're creating the drum, it's like giving birth to yourself. It's a rebirth. And so there's many traditional rites that we do that represent a rebirth and represent the coming around to self, and also owning and honoring what the creator has given us in this lifetime. So part of my sacred, I guess, journey towards naming was creating this drum.
Are you open to playing a little bit?
And it's like a heartbeat. It's the heartbeat of the mother of ourselves. And when you carry your drum with you, it protects you for your life. It becomes your medicine. Also, something that's also very sacred in Native tradition is the rattle. And the rattle, this one is made from deer skin, um, and then also, if you see, it's shaped like the turtle. And if you understand Native American culture, the turtle is very significant because they call what has been called the United States. If you look on a map, it's actually shaped like a turtle. It goes all the way up into Canada. And so that's what we refer to as Turtle Island. And Turtle Island was before states were divided up. People were moved into lines that were, called something to separate us. So when people speak of Turtle Island, that is what they mean. They're talking about the whole United States into Mexico, in South America, and into Canada. That it really was all one place until the colonization happened. So this rattle is shaped like the turtle, and then it also has some sacred stones as well as a feather. And in also in the tradition of the feathers, they're also very sacred because they come from the birds who carry the message of spirit and are the closest to Wakan. They're the closest to being able to go um, to both worlds, the spirit world, and bring the messages down to the earthly plane. And then also another thing that I'm being given through spirit after my naming, sometimes what happens is when you begin to live your truth and walk the red road, then the elders, the ancestors, they start to teach you things and they start to show you who you really are. And very early on, when I had met Hiakapamato, he had showed me his like breathtaking beadwork. I was learning about what the regalia symbolizes, and every piece of the beadwork on the so just to give you a little reference point, regalia for the powwow. The powwow was intertribal. That was when all the people would come together and share their sacred medicine, to dance, to sing, to share stories, but all from, separate places. They would all come together, and it would be, a whole, I think back then, originally it was like 5 or maybe a week long thing where they would just come together and share tradition. And so the regalia always has the symbols of either the colors of where you're from, and on the beadwork it will have stories. So there might be symbols like triangles representing the teepee, or different, like the buffalo is very sacred to the Lakota, as I mentioned. So when you see the buffalo, the white buffalo is even more sacred because they believed through origin story that there was a sacred white buffalo calf woman who came and actually brought the Lakota rites. Not only did she bring the rites, she also brought what they call the sacred pipe, and in the Lakota term, it's the chanupa. And so whoever carried the chanupa was the leader of, and would carry forward these teachings and keep everyone in harmony, in other words, through these sacred rites. And as we're talking about here, one of those rites is making relatives. And what that means literally is creating that sacred circle to keep yourself healthy, um, at peace, um, accountable, strong, wise, all of those things. So all those people that you're lining up around you are giving you and each other the strength to be the best part of the circle. So one of the things that was brought to me when I first was looking at this beadwork, I just kept like thinking about it and thinking about it. So I now am creating my own regalia, and one of this is an earring that I started working on. And if you notice, the symbol is a heart, and then around it are the colors of the rainbow. So there was a prophecy that at some point, that all of us would come together. And remember, also, the medicine wheel represents all the different races as well. So it represented that we are all connected, and that it's as the circle of life, we're also the circle of all. And so the rainbow warriors were a prophecy that they would be the people that would come together, no matter what their race is, no matter where they come from, that they would come together in the spirit in a peaceful way to bring out the injustices of our systems and bring healing. And so I always identified throughout my entire life with rainbows. Little did I know that this was also part of a prophecy. And so many of the people in the Paza family, the Paza again is the organization, we're all rainbow warriors. We're all people that were given these signs that we're supposed to come together now and support this movement. And so what I wanted to read was, it says, when these things begin to happen, the native people would be all but helpless. But then light would come from the east, and the natives would begin to find their strength, their pride, and their wisdom. So would many of their brothers and sisters of the other nations, white, yellow, and black, who would feel strongly the calling of spirit. They would understand the basic fact that it is the earth which gives us the water, food, clothing, shelter, and beauty necessary for the circle of life. These awakened souls would find each other, and together they would teach all the people of the world to have respect for the Earth Mother, of those and of whose very stuff human beings are made. Respect would prevail. And under the symbol of the rainbow, all the races and religions would band together to spread the great wisdom of living in harmony with each other and with all the creations of the world, and thereby restore the sacred hoop.
Actually love to share a piece with you related to that, written by Charles Eisenstein in a book he wrote, A More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. It's very, very similar and along those lines. Have you noticed any, it sounds like you have, but specifically, have you noticed any changes in relationships with others since receiving your Lakota name? And could you tell us about some of those changes?
What I will say is that the people who are part of this journey are now showing up. And so in every breath that I take, in every step that is in front of me, I am reverent and quite humbled by this calling. I had that, that little nudge and that little spark as a young child to do more in the world, to be there as of service in some way, which then brought me to ministry, which again, I must say, ministry is to minister, right? To minister is to care for. And so all of us are here in this way together now to bring healing and to bring forward, these beautiful messages. There's no other way that we can prevail as an earthly visitor, because that's what we are. The earth belongs to nothing, so we belong to the earth. We're here to take care of and to take care of each other, and then to take care of our home.
During your naming ceremony, was there a particular experience or moment or anecdote that stood out for you that you could share with us?
Well, what I would say is the morning of my naming ceremony, and this is also an individual who you and I both met at the same time in the same place a few years ago. She felt very pulled to come to my ceremony, and her name is Pam. And when we call her Mom, by the way, she has a beautiful little nickname. So she shows up, and that morning, I spent the evening in the room, hotel with her. And that morning, she was kind of out of character. Like, she kept saying things that are totally not her personality. Things like, "Oh, you should do my makeup," or, "None of these people know me anyway." And I'm looking at her like, "Yes, they do." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" But she basically, um, without it sounding crazy, she was pretty much carrying the spirit of my mother, who has crossed over, because everything she was saying to me was very much in character of my mother's personality and not hers at all. So I said, "Sure, I'll help you do your makeup." So we're in the bathroom of the hotel. I start doing her eyes, and all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, she became and started to speak in light language and started to tell me, and a couple times she did use English words, something like, my baby, I'm so proud of you, you're doing the right thing." And so all of that apprehension and cold feet feeling that I was having for weeks before about this, commitment that I was, this sacred, I should call it, because it's very sacred, the sacred commitment that I was making, I was visited that morning, through spirit, by my mother. And it was interesting because my friend, after, she came to, she said, "I have never felt more love than I felt in that moment." She's like, "I was saying things that are so not me."
What a beautiful and powerful experience, and how incredible to have your mother present there in spirit. It's very, very special. Samora, I wanted to ask you, now that you have been through the whole naming ceremony, and you've experienced it, what advice or encouragement do you have for other people looking to possibly go through the same experience, or who at least are looking to reconnect with their cultural heritage and to undergo a similar, transformational experience?
Well, I believe that no matter what we do in our lifetime, that it's so important to educate ourselves, not just believe what we've been taught, that we need to go visit these places and experience the land of where many of these tribal communities are. That it's not just about being named, it's really about being respectful of the truth of whatever that is. And to be honest, many of us are doing our ancestry DNA and, like, searching through our blood who we are and what our real origins are. But at the end of the day, I don't believe there's any of us that are pure blood anything anymore. And so the more we spend time dividing ourselves, calling ourselves this, continuously creating a reason to, change our gender, change, who we are, our identity, the more that we're not honoring the creator and the place that where we are. Because if you look at the world of birds, there's a million different type of birds. And there's, if you look around in nature, we're all meant to be different, we're all unique, we're all sacred. And when we treat ourselves as sacred, then everything around us becomes sacred. And so that inner search and that inner need to identify with something also should happen in a sacred way, not just for the sake of calling ourselves something, or not just for the sake of being part of something, because we're already part of the same space. We're all connected energetically. We're all living in the same, in the same realm. And so I am a strong believer that sometimes when you go on that search to identify, that you're actually creating division. And so how is it that we can educate ourselves and help those in need, and then at the same time empower each and every individual to really just be who they are in that moment, and that it not have to be this constant search outward, to have your true identity revealed.
And I feel like just, knowing and understanding yourself and the idea that someone like you has never ever existed in the history of time or since the beginning of time, and someone as unique as you will never ever exist again. That in and of itself is just, it's
Yes.
incredible. It's a miracle.
And what's even more miraculous is if you take all of our dressing off, our skin, or everything off, and just go to the soul, that's who we are. We walk, with, as one of my teachers, Saguru is one of my teachers. He talks about that we're just a walking memory. That we are a we are a collection of things. So we can identify our mother, our father in our, in our nose or in our lips, or we're a gathering of memories. And so when you take off, if you were to get rid of your memory and get rid of your understanding of all of this, you're a soul, you're a light. And so we're all individual lights shining. And that's the truth of who we are.
Would you mind sharing book recommendations? I know you read a lot, and you shared with us a reading about the Rainbow Warriors. If you wouldn't mind sharing that book or any other ones that
Sure,
you
yes.
should mind.
So this book is called The Legend of the Rainbow Warriors by Stephen McFadden. It's an amazing read, and it does really speak to, he's a journalist, but it really does speak to the prophecy, of all of us need to come together, in order for real true healing to happen. That, even in the amongst the tribes, even the people within the tribes, because what people need to understand is that when there is genocide, when people come in and purposely take away your resources to thrive, and take away your access to life, a healthy life, take away the food, take, like the buffalo. There's a famous photo of a gentleman standing on the top of, I want to say it's a mountain of probably 3,000 buffalo heads, skulls. And the intention was, when they created those reservations, the intention was, oh, yeah, sure, you can coexist. You live over there, but where they put them, they also took away all their buffalo. They killed the very thing that fed them, that housed them, that was their medicine, literally. So when you do something like that, the goal was to get, to basically kill them all. And it's still, to this day, real. And the problem is that when you take a society that has been treated in such a way where they feel invisible or put over there, then they are also going to implode and be genocidal towards each other. Because when they're not shown another way, or they're always taught, you're over here, you fend for yourselves, but then you take away the resource. This is what we're not being taught. And so this is where my heart opens and becomes more passionate. And so educate yourselves. It's not a matter of becoming part of the Tioshbae. It's really about being that character that stands up and really looks at, how can we change the narrative? How can we, support these societies that are still, in pain from being erased, and yet you're like living on their land. So it's very different, and I won't compare, but I'll say it's very different when it's your own land that people are occupying and then sending you over there, as opposed to you being brought to a land and forced to live there and acclimate. This is different. This is, and then for it to still exist to this day. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. Okay, but the other book, which is very spiritual, and every page is a prayer as far as I'm concerned. She's her name is Robin Wall Kimmerer. You know this book. Okay. Braiding Sweetgrass.
It is, I have read that book. It is one of the best books I've ever read on native traditions and medicines and the use of their medicines. It's beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
Mhm.
And you could open up to any page and be given a gift. So those are two books right now that resonate. There's so many. I mean, there's so many. And I'm sure that when we explore more, we'll come up with an even bigger resource.
All right, in closing, what is your message for the world?
I would say one of the most beautiful terms that is used in, well, there's two, in the Lakota language. The Lakota language, what's so beautiful about it is that every word is connected to spirit. And when they speak, it's like they're singing. It's like everything is a song, that we're all born with a prayer, with a song. So when you're given a name, also, it's very much connected to spirit. And so they never say goodbye. They say Doksha Ake, which means the next time my heart connects with you. Until the next time our hearts connect. So that's beautiful. But there's also a term that whenever you're with people in any setting, that you end your time together by saying Madakiwase, which means we are all connected.
Of hearts and connections. I just want to thank you as always for being here with me. The time is so precious that we spend together. I have learned so much today, as I mentioned, around the medicine wheel and traditions and the naming ceremony. You always teach me so much about traditional wisdom in general. And then I feel you are the absolute embodiment of your name, Harmony Woman, and not only Harmony Woman, but also the Rainbow Warrior. And from my heart to yours, I look forward to the moment when our hearts reconnect again. Thank you.
Dokshake.